I don't really talk about what happened up there anymore. The few times I've tried, people either laugh it off or give me that polite look you give someone who's been through a breakdown. I get it. It sounds impossible when you say it out loud. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. It's been 7 years, and I still wake up some nights with my heart pounding, convinced I'm back there, listening to that sound behind the walls. In December 2018, my uncle offered me his old hunting cabin up by White Lake, Alaska. I just lost my job at a newspaper and needed quiet, somewhere to get my thoughts together and work on some freelance pieces. The cabin was about 15 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by dense forest and frozen marsh. When I got there, it was beautiful, old pinewood panels, a small dock half buried in snow, a wood stove that groaned like an old animal when it heated up. My uncle warned me before I left. He said, "Don't get caught there during a blizzard. That lake's strange. The snow can bury sound. People get turned around out there." I laughed. I thought he was just being dramatic. For the first week, it was perfect. I read, wrote, fished through the ice. The cold was sharp but manageable. The silence out there felt holy. Until the storm came. The first flakes came around sunset, harmless, slow. By midnight, it was a white wall outside the window. I remember stepping onto the porch and hearing nothing. Not wind, not trees, just the deep, absolute silence of falling snow. By morning, the drifts were up to the window ledge. The power lines were dead. My phone showed no service. It was fine. I had wood, food, and candles. I figured I'd ride it out for a few days. But that night, the generator cut out. And I heard it for the first time. A sound, faint but deliberate, 3 knocks at the back door. I froze. I thought maybe it was ice cracking off the roof. But then it came again, 3 slow, heavy knocks like someone with bare knuckles on wood. I called out, "Hello." No answer. When I opened the door, snow blew in hard and there was nothing there. Just an empty porch, white and untouched. I shut the door fast and tried to laugh at myself. But the knocking came again an hour later, same rhythm. Always 3. The third night was worse. The wind had picked up, howling through the chimney. I couldn't sleep. I sat by the stove, feeding it logs, when I heard something that made my blood run cold. A voice, faint, behind the wall near the bedroom. "Please." I dropped the poker. It wasn't the wind. It was soft, strained, almost a whisper. I pressed my ear to the wall. "Please let me in. It's so cold." It sounded like a woman. I checked the window, pitch black, nothing but my own reflection. But when I looked down, I saw wet footprints on the floor, bare feet, small like a woman. They led from the back door to the bedroom. I swear on everything, I hadn't opened that door again. On the 5th day, the storm eased for a few hours. I went outside to check the generator shed. The air was bitter and still. The snow came up to my thighs. The shed door was open. Inside, the snow was melted in places, dark, damp, like someone had been sleeping there. The generator was frozen solid. When I turned back toward the cabin, I saw movement by the lake, a figure. A woman standing on the frozen surface. Her hair was black and long, tangled with ice. She wasn't wearing a coat. At first, I thought she might be real, some stranded hiker. I shouted, but she didn't move. She just looked at me. Then she took a single step forward and the ice under her didn't break. I ran. I didn't look back until I was inside and the door was locked. That night, the temperature dropped to -30. I kept the stove burning, but the cold still bit through the walls. Around midnight, I heard the knocking again, this time on the window. 3 knocks. Then another set from the door. Then from the other side of the cabin. It was everywhere, like a dozen hands hitting the walls in unison. I covered my ears, shouting, but it didn't stop. Then silence. I thought it was over until I heard the whisper, right behind me. So close it felt like it came from inside my head. "You opened the door, now it's warm." I turned, and for a split second, I swear I saw her. She was standing near the stove, steam rising off her skin, eyes gray like frozen water. Her mouth hung open as if she were still whispering. Then she was gone. The storm broke 2 days later. I don't remember much of the last night, just the sound of the fire crackling and the walls creaking. When the search team reached me, I was sitting in the corner, wrapped in blankets, shaking so bad I couldn't speak. They told me the cabin was nearly buried, said I was lucky to be alive. But what really unsettled me was when one of the men, the youngest one, asked quietly, "Did anyone else make it out?" I told him I was alone. He frowned and said, "Because we found footprints in the snow around the cabin, a woman's, barefoot, fresh ones." I didn't say anything. I just stared at the lake, gray and still under the morning light. When I got back to town, I learned that my uncle's cabin had a history. In 1994, a woman went missing up there. She'd been staying alone for the winter. They never found her body, just a hole in the lake ice and her boots on the shore. Every now and then, fishermen say they hear knocking when the lake freezes, like someone trapped beneath, trying to get out. I know how it sounds. I've spent years convincing myself it was just exhaustion, hypothermia, maybe isolation messing with my head. But when the wind outside my apartment howls in the winter, I sometimes hear it again. 3 slow knocks, and the faintest whisper through the noise. "Please let me in." People always assume that professional drivers get numb to danger after a while. You run enough snowy routes, patch enough tires on black ice, and it all blurs into routine. That was true for me for almost 20 years, until February 11, 2019. That was the night I learned how long a person can stay awake inside a storm, and how a face you see for less than a minute can follow you for the rest of your life. Leaving Windham. It was supposed to be a simple run, Windham to Faircross, 43 miles through the mountain pass. I took the night shift because my wife worked days, and we'd trade off watching our daughter. It was snowing when I left the depot at 8:10 p.m. Nothing dramatic, big lazy flakes drifting through the headlights. By the time I picked up the last passengers at the Windham stop, there were 6 of them. An older man in a green parka, 2 college girls from the university, a young mother and her little boy, and a middle-aged woman hauling grocery bags. They spread out across the seats, the heater humming, wipers squeaking in rhythm. At the edge of town, the radio forecast came through. Blizzard warning after midnight. I figured we'd be long off the road by then. Around 9:45 p.m. the road narrowed to 2 lanes and the snow thickened into a wall. Visibility maybe 20 feet. The mountain pass always did that. It trapped the weather like a funnel. I slowed to 30, leaned forward over the wheel. That's when I saw her. A shape standing in the high beams, right at the shoulder. At first I thought it was a signpost until it moved, just 1 step. A woman, thin, barefoot, hair matted to her face. I braked hard. The bus fishtailed before settling. Everyone looked up. The mother whispered, "Oh my God, she's going to freeze." So I opened the doors. The woman climbed aboard without a word. Her skin looked gray in the fluorescent light, her eyes unfocused. Water dripped off her hair onto the rubber floor. I asked if she was hurt, if she'd been in an accident. Nothing, she just walked to the last seat and sat down. I thought maybe shock. People shut down like that in cold. I told everyone we'd take her straight to Faircross Hospital and started the bus again. 10 minutes later, the heater coughed once and died. The temperature dropped so fast my breath fogged the windshield. I fiddled with the controls, nothing. Behind me, the passengers started murmuring. The little boy whimpered, "Mommy, I'm cold." The older man cursed and said, "This isn't right. We should have stayed in town." I glanced in the mirror. The woman in the back was staring straight ahead, lips slightly parted. Steam, actual vapor, rose off her clothes. The snow outside looked blue from the headlights, the kind of blue that means deadly cold. Then the lights flickered, once, twice, and everything went black. Stug. I grabbed my flashlight and tried the ignition, dead. The emergency radio was nothing but static. The entire world outside had disappeared into white. The grocery bag lady began to pray under her breath. I told everyone to stay calm, to keep close for body heat. That's when the little boy said, "Mommy, she's crying." I turned the beam toward the back. The woman was bent forward, her shoulders shaking. For a second I felt relief, finally a sign of life. Then I saw what was running down her face. It wasn't tears. It was water, dark, almost black, streaming from her eyes, freezing before it hit her chin. She lifted her head slowly. Her pupils were gone. "I waited," she whispered. The sound wasn't right. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. The flashlight flickered. The air turned so cold my lungs hurt to breathe. The college girls started screaming. The old man lunged down the aisle, yelling for me to open the doors. I hit the release lever, nothing. Frozen solid. The woman stood. Her joints moved stiff, jerky, like she'd forgotten how to use them. She said again, louder, "I was waiting, you didn't stop." A gust of wind roared through the bus, though every window was shut. Frost crawled across the glass from the inside, spiraling into patterns that looked like hands. The lights exploded back on for half a second. And in that flash, every window showed faces pressed against it, white and screaming. Then darkness. I remember grabbing the emergency hammer, smashing the driver's side window. The glass didn't shatter, it crumbled, falling out in perfect squares. I jumped into the snow and ran until my legs gave out. They found me at dawn 2 days later, 5 miles from the highway. The rescuers said I was hypothermic and half delirious, mumbling about the lake girl. When they located the bus, it was buried up to the windows in drifted snow. All 6 passengers were inside, seated as if waiting for the ride to start. No trauma, no signs of struggle. Just frozen, eyes wide open, skin pale as candle wax. The strange part, every watch, phone, and clock on the bus had stopped at 10:22 p.m., the moment the heater died. The authorities said carbon monoxide leak or flash freeze. They never explained the frost patterns, hundreds of overlapping handprints inside the glass. No one mentioned a 7th passenger. There was no evidence anyone else had ever been on board. I quit driving a month later. Sold the house, moved 3 states away. My wife tried to be patient, but I'd wake up drenched in sweat, gasping, certain I was still in that bus. She said sometimes in the middle of the night I'd sit up and whisper, "We should have stopped." Last winter, a reporter called me about the anniversary of the Route 7 tragedy. He asked if I wanted to comment. I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. He told me the rescue team who'd hauled the bus from the drift had stored it in an impound lot for investigation. The following spring, a security guard quit after claiming he'd seen a woman sitting in the back seat, dripping wet, every night around 10 p.m. They eventually scrapped the vehicle. Still, when the first snow of the year hits my windshield and the wipers start their slow rhythm, I find myself glancing at the rearview mirror. Most nights it's empty. But once, last December, I thought I saw her again. Just a blur of gray hair and a pair of colorless eyes staring back from the last row. And for a moment, I swear I heard the heater whisper to life. Just long enough for a voice to say, "I was waiting for the bus."
Subscribe.